So please, would you all welcome Kim Hall.
Thank you, everyone. I'm impressed with the turnout. I thought there could be a lot of competition with the cannabis talk happening at the same time, but glad to see you're all here to learn about better backs and balance. Who here can tell me what a healthy human spine looks like from the front? Straight, that is right. A healthy human spine from the front should be straight. There is a condition called scoliosis. Has anyone heard of scoliosis? Yes. So this is where there would be a slight S-curve in the spine, and sometimes that slight S-curve can get worse as we age or as we become less active. There are lots of exercises and different things that you can do in order to help a spine that has scoliosis. Scoliosis people are born with, and sometimes people don't even realize they have it early in life, and maybe around 30s or 40s they start to have some pain and get assessed, and they're informed that they have scoliosis. So a healthy human spine should be straight up and down. Sometimes with scoliosis you might see a slight or extreme S-curve. What does a healthy human spine look like from the side? S-curve. Wow, we've got some people who know the human body here. Okay, so there's...
I graduated in 1955.
You're physio. I remember you came to my talk a few years ago.
Just after the Boer War.
Great. So the healthy human spine from the side is an S-curve. And our tailbone should go just a little bit behind. So we have a concavity at our neck. So if everyone puts their hand behind their neck, can you feel, ideally it should be going inwards like a C. Ideally it's not pointing forwards or too flat. We should have a slight curve in our upper back. And we should also have a curve in our low back. So can people stick their hand behind their low back and feel? Do you feel that you have a C shape in your low back and not, it shouldn't be too flat and it shouldn't be sticking out that way. As we spend too much time sitting or becoming less active, what does the human spine become shaped as? It looks like a C. And then the tailbone is facing forwards. So we lose those concavities in our neck and in our low back, and our spine ends up looking kind of like this if we're not active, if we're not moving and exercising our back and body in the right way. Who here has heard of osteoporosis? So osteoporosis is where the bone density becomes weakened, and a person who has a spine shaped like this likely has some degree of osteoporosis and likely has some vertebrae, the bones in their back, that are now shaped like wedges. They might have had compression fractures. In the healthy human spine, they're going to be nice, strong blocks looking more square and cube-like. So this is the optimal shape that we want in order to keep our vertebrae in good health. Can anyone tell me where the center of gravity is in a healthy human spine?
L4.
Very specific, yes. Anybody else give a less technical answer as to where the center... Around your waist, yes, it's around your belly button. So it's around L4, around there. Actually, that's a little high, but yeah, it's in the low back. It's around the waist, around the belly button, around L3, L4. And where is it most common to get back pain? In the low back, yes. So that is in part because our center of gravity is working hard, and it's really important to have good core strength, good core muscles, in order to keep this center of gravity well supported. Has everyone heard of core strengthening? Core strength exercises? Yes. So that's in part why it's so important, is because the core strength helps maintain the support around our center of gravity, which helps improve our balance. Where would the center of gravity be in a spine shaped like this? It's higher, that's right. It's higher and it's more forwards. So it would be about here. So somebody who has a spine shaped like this likely uses a cane or walker in order to help support them, because if they didn't, the center of gravity is now higher and forwards, and they're going to be at high risk of falling. So this is why we want to keep our spine well aligned. So right now I want everybody to pay attention to how they're sitting. If you have your legs crossed, please uncross your legs. Have your feet side by side. You're going to sit up a little bit higher in the chair. And we're just going to do a few exercises together. I do have some handouts. Kristen at the back has some handouts too of the exercises that we're going to do together. So, if you put your finger on your chin, try and pull your chin straight back. So ideally, the ear sits over top of the shoulder blade, over top of the shoulder joint here. Very good. And so you can relax and then just pull your neck back, hold a few seconds, and relax. So it's very important not to go up and down, but just to pull the neck straight back. When you do this exercise, you shouldn't feel any sharp pain, but you might feel a little bit of tension, or you might feel the muscles in the back of the neck getting tired because they're probably not used to working very hard. So that would be one exercise that you can all do. The next would be to help strengthen the muscles in the upper back here in order to try and avoid getting too rounded. It's important to strengthen the muscles in the upper back. So being mindful of your neighbor's elbows, just reach forwards with both arms, and then if you pull back and squeeze your shoulder blades, you should feel the muscles in between your shoulder blades work, and you hold about 3 seconds and then relax. Good. So great. And then if you're more advanced and you have good seating balance, you can even lean forwards and then pull back. So you're getting some good movement in your upper back. So it's rowing. It's a seated rowing exercise. Very good. So you can do that about 10 times. Great. So all of these exercises you can do in sitting or standing, and you can do them while you're waiting at the doctor's office or during commercials when you're watching your favorite television program. It's important to not stay in one position for too long a period. Otherwise, your spine gets stiff and your joints get achy. So moving on a regular basis is really important. You probably don't want to be in any one position for longer than a half hour at a time. If you are traveling on an airplane, it's really important to get up and walk up and down the aisles to loosen up your hips and your knees and your ankle joints, and also to help with your circulation. So on a plane, it's usually recommended if you can get up every hour and just walk a few lengths of the airplane. I do it regularly. Yes, people are going to look at you funny, especially when you start to do your sideways walking, but it's worth it. You're investing time into healthy hips and a healthy back. Another exercise that can be done, we won't try it together right now, is to help maintain this curve in the low back, is to, in standing, put your hands behind your low back, stand with your feet about shoulder width apart, and then just look straight up towards the ceiling. Some of you may only be able to have a little bit of movement, and others will be able to have more movement. So if you do this exercise regularly, you can do it up to 10 times, but you might only start with 3 or 5 repetitions. So I will tell you a little bit more about Physio2 in a moment. Does anyone have questions about the curvatures and the healthy human spine? Yes?
These movements are forward and back. What about this way? Is that damage?
Good question. So the question was, these movements that I've described and the exercises I've described are forwards and back. Does rotating or moving your back to the side damage your back? The answer is no. But it's important to gently exercise into those ranges. Somebody with osteoporosis has to be very careful about loading and twisting. So if someone with osteoporosis is lifting a grocery bag out of the trunk, it's not advised that they twist. They should pick up their legs and lower a weight that way. You can train your body to be able to handle weight. So if somebody were to work out at the gym, they might start with just twisting 10 times each side and then add 2 pounds and slowly add it up, but it is something that needs to be trained. Dancing is a really good exercise as well because it usually involves rotation and side bend of your spine and moving your body in all sorts of ways that encourage healthy posture. Yes, another question at the back. Front and back. Okay, so question is she has this sort of movement happening. Is that right? Why is that happening? Is that your question? Okay, so in order for us to stay balanced, we have little movements that our ankles, knees, and hips are capable of doing. So sometimes if your balance isn't strong, your ankles, knees, and hips may start to sway in order to keep you balanced. For me, standing in this room right now, I don't need to use those movements, but if I was on a ferry, if I was on the BC ferries and I was just standing there, you'd probably see me doing a little bit of this, and it's because my ankle, knee, and hip movements are helping me stay balanced. In relation to that, I will invite Twyla, one of our North Shore physios, up here just to do a demonstration. So if I push Twyla lightly from behind, you're probably going to see her ankles, knees, and hips move to help keep her upright. So somebody with good balance, if they were to get knocked from behind, they would be able to use their knee, hip, and ankle movements to stay upright. If the force was bigger, you're going to see a different type of reaction. So this is called the stepping reaction. So if Twyla had impaired balance and she was at the mall and a little child came up and ran behind her and knocked her over, she'd be able to use her stepping balance. Or stepping reaction. You can also use the stepping reaction to the side, and you can also use it to the back. So as physiotherapists, we will train our clients to be able to have good stepping reactions. And it's really important to have good stepping reaction forwards. That's not good.
That was good.
Use your right leg. There you go. To the right leg and to the back. So we will use all of those drills with our clients to safely train the stepping reaction and to decrease the risk of falls and keep them on their feet. Great. Thanks, Twyla. Yes?
How do you feel about back surgery? Should it be a last resort? Or do you think some people get a good result out of back surgery?
Good question. The question is, what's my opinion on back surgery? Should it be used as a last resort? The answer is yes. We know now a lot more about spinal surgeries, and so they used to fuse multiple joints, and that's not ideal. So nowadays, maybe fusing one joint at a problem area might be okay, but yes, back surgery should be a last resort. Interestingly, the local neurosurgeon here, he gets all sorts of referrals, usually for back surgery, from GPs, and I asked him, what % of the patients you see do you actually do surgery on? Any guesses as to what actual % he does surgery on? 10%, that's right. I thought it was going to be about 50%, but it was only 10%. So even him as a surgeon is using surgery as a last resort, and otherwise it's better to use exercises management, changing different habits in your everyday life in order to help manage the spine.
Can I please ask you, is that how you
Is that how you feel about having your hip replaced? Is that, where does that come in the, how long do you go with not being able to stand up, like
Good.
hip?
Okay,
problems?
so what's my opinion on hip surgery? So hip surgery is very different than back surgery because we're dealing with quite a large ball and socket joint. There's bone, there's soft tissue, and there are nerves and blood vessels, but those are all kind of outside the area. When we're dealing with back surgery, the joints are much, much smaller, and the spinal cord is there, there's nerve roots there, there's a lot more things that can go wrong. So it's more likely that I would suggest hip surgery in certain cases than back surgery. So total knee and hip replacements are very common surgeries these days. Who here has one of these? Any ideas what this is? This is a total knee replacement, yes. So I have here a total knee and a total hip replacement parts. And the reason why I bring them in is because I want you guys to feel them and know that they are heavy. They're nothing like our bone. Our natural bone is just designed so well the way that all the little osteoblasts and osteoclasts are built, that our bones are light, are strong and light, and metal is quite heavy. And so a total knee replacement is an invasive surgery. If you can avoid it, you do want to avoid it. But sometimes if people are in a lot of pain, if the cartilage is worn out in the knees and hips and there's bone-on-bone contact, and people are in a lot of pain, they're limping, and they have deformities of the hip or knee, so they can't bend or straighten their knee all the way. Maybe they can only move their hip this way, and they've got very little internal and external rotation, then yes, a hip or knee replacement is warranted. They've been doing these surgeries for about 70 years, so they are quite well refined now. And in many countries in the world, it's a day surgery. In Canada here, you'll usually still spend 1 to 3 nights in the hospital after a total knee or hip replacement. But yes, I am more likely to suggest a client go see the surgeon to be able to get a hip replacement or a hip surgery versus back surgery. Just before I answer your question, I will hand these around, and I want you to pay special attention to how this surface is inside. It almost looks like stainless steel wool. So any ideas as to why that would be? Not for rust. Not for cartilage, not for easier movement, not for cushioning. Yes, it is for the bone to fuse. So it's for getting better adhesion and better length of joint life. So because our bone doesn't look like chalk. If you look at our bone underneath a microscope, it looks like a sponge. There's all these columns and different layers that are intersecting, and so the bone is able to grow into this, and you get really good adhesion and really good life of the joint. So I will hand these around. So this part would go in this upper shin bone, and this part would go in the lower part of the thigh bone of our femur. So I'll hand those around. So that's the total knee replacement. So then what's this? This is a hip, yes. So who has a hip replacement in the room? A few of you, yes. So this hip is a ball and socket joint. So all I have here actually is half a hip. This part would get hammered into the femur, and then the ball sits on the top and rolls around in your pelvis. So what I'm missing here is basically what looks like a little teacup that sits in the pelvis. Usually that teacup is metal with plastic or ceramic, and then this ball and socket joint goes around. Now this is square. Any ideas why this is rectangular with very sharp corners instead of being round? Old models were round. It's more stable, that's right. So the round ones that they used decades ago would roll around, and within 10 years you would need a revision because the thing just became very loose. But this, because our bone is round, so if you put this in a round bone, it is a lot more stable, and you get better life of the hip joint. I'll hand this around at the back. Kristen, do you want to come collect this and hand around that back? So this, please hand this off in two parts so that otherwise it'll drop out and we'll have hips rolling around on the ground. So you don't want that.
How does that stay lubricated?
How does it stay lubricated? So our joints make synovial fluid, and our joint capsule is damaged in the surgery, but eventually it does start to make some level of lubrication again. So it's with our natural synovial fluid. Yes?
About iliotibial band syndrome because of the knee replacement.
Iliotibial band syndrome with a knee replacement. Come talk to me after. That's a not common condition to have after knee replacement, but it's possible. Yes?
I wanted to ask if both the hip and knee joints are always titanium, or are they other metals used as well? Titanium's the lightest, right?
That's right. Good question. So the question is, are the total hip and knee replacements made of titanium? Always made of titanium? No. They're the only people I know getting the titanium joints, because it's so expensive, are usually young people. So I knew a 25-year-old woman who had osteosarcoma. That's the same type of bone cancer as Terry Fox had. When Terry Fox had bone cancer in his thigh, back then they amputated the leg, and so for her they just did a knee replacement. So for her they gave her a titanium joint. Typically, like these ones are more of a chromium cobalt combination, and there's surgical steel, there's different metals used. So there's a wide range of metals used for hip and knee replacements. Titanium is used, but it's not common.
What if your own bones get thinner and then the pin is inside the bone and you start moving it too much and your hip replacements are about 20 years old? Can it go through the pin through the bone?
So the question is, if you've had a total knee or hip replacement that's quite old, so let's say it's 20 years old and the bone has thinned or the bone has become less dense, can the metal compartment go through? And the answer was no. I've never seen that happen before. They do loosen. So sometimes people do need revision surgeries, and that's why rehabilitating your joint after surgery and working with physios after surgery is so important to maximize the muscle strength and the stability of the joint. Also making sure the muscles are equally strengthened. So because we sit so much and walking tends to be in this sort of movement, our hip flexors can get very strong, but our hip abductors, the muscles on the side of our hip, and often our glutes get weak with too much sitting or with not enough movement and activity. So working with a physiotherapist after a knee or hip replacement is really important in order to avoid loosening and to stabilize your joint as best as it can. So another reason why it's really important to be mindful of your spine curves when you're sitting, when you're standing, when you're walking, when you're gardening, is to avoid breaking down excessive cartilage in other joints in your body, like your knees and hips. So if someone's walking around like this, then the mechanics of their walking changes a lot, and they're going to be wearing out the cartilage, and they're likely going to be wearing out the cartilage in their hips and knees. So it's another reason to make sure that you have good spine position for your back in order to protect your hip and your knee joints. Our whole bodies all works together, works as a system together. So improving the strength of your back definitely helps improve the biomechanics and the movement at your knee and at your hip. Who can tell me what the largest muscle is on the human body? You got it. Here's a Physio 2 Forever calendar for you. The biggest muscle on the human body is the gluteus maximus. Some have bigger than others. So the gluteus maximus is really important to be strong because it keeps us upright, and when we walk, we use it to power forwards. If somebody walks like this, if they have a weak gluteus maximus, if they can't really power forwards, you end up shuffling. So having a strong gluteus maximus and good hip range of motion, flexible hips, gives you a better walking pattern. Who can tell me what the largest muscle group on the human body is? Not the shoulder. I heard someone say thigh. Can you be more? The quads, yes. Do you mind giving that to the lady in the black shirt? So the quadriceps are the largest muscle group in our human body. So to have really strong quads and making sure that they're equally strong on the outside of the knee as well as the inside of the knee is going to prevent asymmetries and painful conditions like IT band syndrome. So another reason why it's really valuable to be assessed by a physiotherapist is to make sure that your muscles are equally strong on each side.
What's a good exercise for the quad?
That is a good question. We'll answer that one at the end because there's a lot of good exercises for the quads, and the answer is it depends on the person because you might be strong on the outside or strong on the inside and need something different. But squats is the general answer. So I would just like to tell you a little bit more about Physio to You. So I started my career in the hospital systems. I started working at Richmond Hospital, and what I recognized was that we were pushing people a little weaker, a little sicker out the door, and people weren't given the opportunity and the time to recover from their surgery or their injury or their illness. And there's many clinics around, but a lot of the clinics are not set up for people who might have impaired vision or impaired hearing or use a wheelchair or use a walker. And it's nice to be able to have somebody come to the home and give you a full assessment and be able to treat you in the comfort and convenience of your own home. Also, you don't have to worry about transportation or having your daughter take off more time from work in order to drive you around. So these are some of our happy clients and some of our therapists. So Twyla Pittman is one of our North Shore therapists. And Twyla, Kristen, and I have over 50 years of experience treating backs to help make them better and treating total knee and hip replacements. Also in the room with us today is Kristen Duncan. She's at the back, so she's another one of our North Shore physiotherapists. And some of your questions, all of us will be sticking around for about 15 minutes afterwards. So if you're not too hungry for lunchtime, then you can ask one of us your questions. I'd also like to mention the exercise on the bottom of this page. We have handouts. Some of you received them at the back of the room. I'll hand these ones out in a moment. Is chest lift. So I think it's time for another movement break. So in order to also help with the spine position of our neck and our upper back, if you can put your hands behind your back, or behind your neck, sorry. Good, and then you're going to try and look up towards the ceiling and you're going to lift your chest. So supporting your neck and lifting your chest. Wow, I see some people have really good upper back bend. And you can hold it for 2-3 seconds and then come back forwards. Good, so try that 3 more times. Looking up towards the ceiling, lifting the chest, not just cranking the neck back, and then coming back forwards. And trying it 2 more times, so lifting that up. Sometimes I tell women to show off your diamond necklace or show off your pearl necklace. Good. And you can also pair this with your breathing. Inhaling and exhaling as you come down. So none of these exercises should cause any sharp pain. You might feel pulling and tension where you're stiff or where you're loose. Some of you, I could see, had really good shoulder movement on one side and your shoulder movement on the other side wasn't as good. So you've got some asymmetries there. It's something that might be worth getting assessed and checked out and treated in order to prevent future injury or future pain down the road. So who here goes to exercise class on a regular basis? Oh, wow, I'm so impressed. So for those of you who don't go to exercise class on a regular basis, I suggest you check some out. I think there's lots that are happening at West Van Community Centre, and I know in North Vancouver there's lots as well. And then otherwise, you can try doing these at home as a starter. And also, Kristen and Twyla are happy to come to your home to provide a full head-to-toe assessment and figure out where your asymmetries or weaknesses may be in order to help. So I'll let Twyla hand those out front. So in addition to having ideal spinal alignment in order to have a healthy back, and also help your balance, there's other things that we can use as we age to help our balance if we end up with posture like this. So there's canes and there's walkers. Does anyone in the room have a cane? Oh, who here has a cane? May I borrow it briefly? Perfect. Okay, this one's a folding cane. So a cane is the first line of defense if your balance is affected and you need a little bit of extra help. This tip is in good condition here, I see. Sometimes these rubber stoppers do wear out and need to be replaced, but this one's in good shape. So the cane typically you would hold on the opposite side of the impaired leg or the weak leg or the painful leg. So let's say if I had a right hip injury or right hip pain, I would hold the cane in my left hand. This cane is almost the right height for me. It should be about 1 inch taller. The cane should be adjusted when you're standing up nice and tall with your arms relaxed by your side. It should be at your wrist crease. So that way it puts your elbow with just enough bend. If your elbow's too straight, this one's too short for me, so this elbow's too straight, it locks my elbow out and I can't use my muscles on the back of my arm efficiently to help support me. So having it be about that height, having about 25, 30 degree bend is the best way to have your arm muscles give you the best support using a cane. Also, the cane always goes with the injured side. So when you see this in the movies, that's wrong. That's the way pirates walk. So the cane should go with the injured leg. So I would walk with the cane like this. Let me see if I can do this way. So this is how I would walk with the cane. So that is your first line of defense. This is called a standard handle. It's not my favorite. The best is an offset handle cane. Does anyone have an offset handle cane in the room? Yes. Can you hold that up a little higher, please? So that is called the offset handle cane. Those ones keep the wrist in the best position, and it's the strongest biomechanically. It can give you a lot of support. So if you are going to buy a cane, I would suggest the offset handle. They're anywhere from like $25 to $35 at Shoppers Drug Mart or London Drugs or Dave's McHugh's, yes, all those types of places. So thank you for lending me your cane there. Yes?
What's your opinion on poles?
What's my opinion on poles? So Nordic walking poles are good for certain people, for certain conditions. The feet, the way the feet look will dictate how much support they can give you. So some of them have very tiny little feet. Those ones are not going to give you any support. They're not going to help your balance very much. They're truly for exercise, for increasing your heart rate more, for increasing your breathing rate more when you're walking and exercising. If you want poles to help offload your knee and your hip joints, they need to have a wider base of support. So they are good for offloading hip, knee, and back joints when you're walking. They're not so convenient because you don't have a free hand, and they fall over easily. Canes usually you can hang up, and they don't fall over so easily. So poles for certain people are useful. Poles are also a lot more expensive, $100 to $150 versus $25, $30. Yes?
Can you explain why you have the cane on the opposite side to the injured leg?
Why does the cane go on the opposite side to the injured leg? it is because of physics and the biomechanics. So if I'm going to put all the weight on this leg, I need to have something else to balance to help my weight. Does that make sense? Yes. So if I step forwards with my right leg, then to have something to hold on to, then all of a sudden I'm not putting as much pressure or weight on here. I have something to help.
So it's not like Crutch's idea.
It's not like Crutch's idea, no. That's right. Yes, yes. And I'll just talk about walkers briefly, because walkers would be the next step to help improve our balance. If you feel that the cane doesn't help you enough, then you might need a walker. So there's four-wheeled walkers and there's two-wheeled walkers. So four-wheeled walkers are quite convenient because they have seats and they often have baskets, so you can carry lots of things in them. They're nice for using in the community because you can sit down anywhere. There doesn't have to be a bench. You can sit and rest anywhere. Activity pacing and taking breaks is an important thing to do when you have knee, hip, or back pain and you need to offload your joints and rest them intermittently throughout the day. If you use a four-wheeled walker, the same height principle applies, so it should be at the wrist crease when you're standing up nice and tall. A lot of people, I lower people's walkers so often, and they're like, oh, but then I'm going to walk hunched over. But no, that's not the case. If you're walking around like this, you are putting a lot of stress and strain on your shoulders and not optimizing how the triceps can work. So you do want a walker height to be at the wrist crease so that you have about a 25 or 30 degree bend in your elbows. If you go to our YouTube page tomorrow, we will have videos that go into more detail about how to adjust the height of your cane or walker. So you can check that out on our Physio to You YouTube page tomorrow. The next thing would be a two-wheeled walker. So if somebody has maybe Parkinson's disease or has had a stroke and has some really severe balance issues, then a two-wheeled walker would be the next most stable thing in order to help somebody walk. With four-wheeled walkers, make sure that your brakes are working well, and especially if you are going to sit on it, make sure that your brakes are turned on. There was more questions. Yes?
Do you have any advice on bursitis?
Do I have any advice on bursitis? Come talk to one of us afterwards. That's that's a can of worms. Yes?
How about neuropathy and balance?
Neuropathy and balance. That is a good question. So there are many things in our body responsible for maintaining our balance. Joints are one of them, and the nerves, being able to power our muscles, is another. So if somebody has a neuropathy, if they've had nerve damage, then sometimes the most common one would be to have a floppy foot, a foot that you can no longer pick up like this. So when somebody walks, they have to lift up their leg in a different way in order to get their foot forwards because they can't lift their heel and bend. So there are things like ankle foot orthoses. There's splints and things that can be used. Sometimes if the neuropathy is affecting a hip muscle, I've seen bungee cords used so that somebody's just getting a little bit of extra assistance to bring their leg forwards every time they walk. So if the neuropathy has caused permanent damage, then usually we'll look for external devices in order to help somebody's balance and their walking. If the neuropathy is expected to recover in time, then we do strengthening and different exercises in order to facilitate return of the nerve function. Question at the back. Yes?
Walkers. A lot of my friends have walkers, but they lean on their walkers. They're not standing up straight. Which is correct?
They should be standing up straight. Give them those exercises that we with the handout. So if somebody is leaning on their walker too much, it means that they are not engaging all the muscles on the back. So everything we do in everyday life tends to be forwards, whether we're washing our face, washing dishes, looking at our laptop, driving on the computer, and there aren't many activities we do in our society to strengthen our back. So that's why it's so important to do focused exercise to strengthen the back and keep our spine well aligned. So those exercises on the sheet in addition to something that works your gluteus maximus, your buttocks muscle, is really important in order to be able to stand up straight. Yes. Yes. Falling down? I'll let Kristen answer that question for you at the end. So the other thing I wanted to talk about is if somebody is afraid of falling or they have had falls in the past, it can be a really great idea to have a medical alert button. Who here has a medical alert button? A few of you. Okay, great. So who here has heard of TELUS's Living Well Companion? So this is basically the Canadian version of Lifeline. You've probably heard of Lifeline. And with technology these days, it's so amazing what they've come up with. So the top-of-the-line mobile device, it's called the Living Well Companion Go, actually works anywhere in Canada where there's mobile cell service. So if you were visiting a daughter in Toronto and you go for a walk in the park and you fall, you're able to push your button there and it will still recognize and you'll recognize the alert and you will get the help you need. The other advantage with the Living Well Companion Go, as well as the fall detection pendant, is there's an accelerometer in it. So in the past, if you have the most basic model and you fainted or you lost consciousness, you'd still be on the ground for an unknown amount of time because how would anyone know that you had fallen and got hurt? But there are two top models, the Living Well Companion Go and their fall detection pendant, both have accelerometers in it. So if you fall and lose consciousness and you're not able to push the button will still go off. The alert device will still go off. So that's quite exciting. So a lot of you have had the brochures. You might have received a brochure. There is a TELUS Health booth. And if you sign up today, there is a code you can use, FIZ2U, and you'll get the first month free. And they range in price from anywhere to $25 to $55. And you also should have received our information. So myself, Twyla, and Kristen are going to stick around for about 15 minutes to answer any one-on-one questions you might have. But if you would like to receive an assessment from Twyla or Kristen, then please give us a call, and our office staff will give you more information. They'll encourage you to look to see if you have any extended benefits from your extended benefit companies that cover physiotherapy. You might not have to pay much or pay anything. And yeah, we're happy to help you. So thank you, everyone.
Could I say a big hand over the applause?
You're welcome, Lenore.